So there's this guy called the Goodfella Man, and he's got a channel on the YouTubes, and he talks, I haven't really seen his channel, but I've seen him around, and I know he talks about anti-feminism and anti-SJW and all that kind of stuff, and I was involved in the questions for anti-SJWs video, and I thought, you know, I'll just do you guys a solid, and I'll answer some SJW questions for those people, which apparently I'm one of, so that means that I guess they're for me. But before I start, I have to say, I don't really see SJW as a legitimate term, and the reason is, not only has it lost all meaning that it sort of originally had, but it very rapidly just turned into some kind of pejorative. Apparently, originally, people who were for social justice called themselves social justice warriors, and a lot of people have been quick to point that out to me. Hey man, it's fine, like, because that's what they called themselves. But, I mean, I never called myself that. I'm somebody who's for social justice, but I'm not, like, a warrior, whatever that means. I think that's just derogatory because it's derived from keyboard warrior, and it just means someone who's really annoying and won't get off your fucking case about, hey man, I'm into social justice, so I'm just gonna keep giving you shit about everything you do, and I'm never gonna shut the fuck up, and I'm just judgmental and annoying. So that's not the way that I see myself. I mean, other people might see me that way, but I try not to be preachy. I try not to call people misogynistic or racist, that kind of stuff, because it just sort of poisons the well. And I've seen so many conflicting reports about what SJW means. Like, someone will say, this is the definition, and they'll show you something, and you read through it, and you're like, well, it sort of makes sense, but then someone else says, this is the definition, and then you will actually see people on the anti-feminist side fighting amongst themselves. You're using SJW tactics, just like an SJW. So then it becomes about tactics. So when you do something skeezy and dodgy, you're like an SJW. You did doxing, or you threatened somebody, or you changed the subject, or you strawmanned. That's so SJW-like. You see that around all the time, and then it's eventually like, it's a catch-all phrase for just things that I don't like. If I see something online or behavior I don't like, that's SJW. That's just the way it seems to me, so I think it's entirely useless, and I have no use for the term. I'm for social justice, but I consider myself a progressive liberal. I'm pro-feminism. I'm not a feminist per se, but there's a Venn diagram and a big overlap between what I believe and feminism. So, I mean, I don't have too many problems with feminism. Not that big a fan of Anita Sarkeesian, whatever, like the third wave, blah, blah. I just think women should have equal rights and... and regressive. I never thought regressive actually was useful in the first place anyways. SJW and regressive are just ways that people feel superior so they don't have to listen. So they can just put you in a little box, say you're a regressive SJW, then they have to fucking listen to a single thing you have to say. And it's just a simple shorthand. It's an easy way of basically ignoring that person, putting them in a neat little package saying you're an SJW, you're aggressive, I don't have to listen anymore, blah, 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 blah. Anything you're saying about, like, you know, systemic racism, blah, 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 whatever. That's just SJW stuff. Or, oh, you're worried about, like, this climate of fear around Muslims, blah, 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 you're aggressive, you just like Sharia law, you want to throw gay people off buildings, blah, 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 blah. So, I mean, I have no fucking use for it, I don't care about it, but, you know, because people associate me with this kind of side of things, I thought I will answer the questions for SJWs from Mr. Goodfella, as if I were one of these mystical, evil SJWs that uses all the bad tactics and screams misogynist at everything that moves. Now, I'm just going to watch these questions blind. I'm not going to pre-watch them, so everything he says will just be new to me. Let's try it out. So this is a liberal progressive response to questions for SJWs. This video is quite long, 33 minutes, so I'll be skipping through it to the relevant parts, and I'll try to just address the parts that are pertinent.
Now, a social justice warrior is not someone who disagrees with me, you know, that can be anyone. You know who you are, you know who these questions are aimed at.
Me?
And, you know, tag your favourite social justice warrior or whatever to see if they can answer the questions, right? So let's go through the questions, right? The first one, right, here we go. So I'll go through these questions.
Let's fucking do it.
When it comes to diversity, right, why is it that you only push for diversity in white countries or countries where the majority of people are white? Right. Now I ask this because I've never heard any social justice warrior claim we need more diversity in India or we need more diversity in China or Cameroon, you know. I've never heard that before. It's only ever white countries or countries where the majority of the population is white is the claim made that we need more diversity. Why is that? I'd like to know why that is, right?
I think it's because some of these Western countries and cultures like America, Canada, the UK, etc. are seen as these kind of melting pots. And we just get this feeling that we want them to be as diverse as possible because that will reflect like the values of freedom that would like people to live under. People will be able to express their religion, express their creativity, and express who they are in a society which is diverse, has many cultures, which has a lot of positive aspects for those societies, as well as some drawbacks, obviously. There's a lot of concern for things that are going on in Europe with multiculturalism, but there's also a lot of benefits to it. Some of the benefits are, for example, increased economic activity, because immigrants tend to contribute to the countries that they move to. That you do get positive contributions such as businesses and restaurants and that kind of thing, and you do get more tax revenue. But then there's some drawbacks, where if they're coming from countries like Africa where there's not very much education, or as we know, the hoopla over Islam, that there's people who are not quite ready to integrate into those societies. That's the problem. But the question was, why? And I think a lot of the time it's merely a good faith desire to see those societies reflect the values of diversity, which the freedom of religion and the freedom of expression of those countries purports to maintain. Maybe that's idealistic. Maybe that's naive. But if you think of it in a good faith way, that's why.
Why are you so ungrateful to men? You're very good at putting men down, right? But just to make clear, right, I'm going to put in the background of this video, my green screen here, I'm going to put in the background a video I made earlier on called Toxic Masculinity, and it shows all these men risking their life, risking their safety in order to save animals, children, women, men, whatever, you name it. They will risk all to save lives, right? And I just want to know, why are you so ungrateful to the very people who would risk their life to save your life? That's something, I mean, that's just one thing. There's also, if you take into account the things that they've invented and done for society, why are you so ungrateful to these people that you constantly hate on them and put them down? Very interested to know the answer to that.
I don't know if I'm ungrateful to them, per se. And I myself am male, so I just obviously don't want any discrimination against men, and I don't want to be treated unfairly because I am a man. But I think the way that it's seen by SJWs is men have held the reins of power for a very long time, and they feel like other people didn't have the opportunity to contribute in the ways that they could have. For example, like when they signed the Constitution of the United States, it said all men were created equal, but they still had slaves, and there was no women present. And then people say, oh, how is it that black people and women have not contributed so much to the history of mankind? And it's like, fairly obvious. They didn't have much of an opportunity to contribute. You know, for women, their way of contributing was being a child bearer and raising a family, which is very important. But they didn't have so many opportunities to invent stuff. And obviously we should be very grateful to the people who risk their lives. But, I mean, in other conversations, people often say not all. Like, not all Muslims, not all this, not all that. This is just a not all case. Not all men. Obviously, not all men are bad. That wouldn't make any fucking sense at all. And anybody who says that should be dismissed by you, because they're ridiculous. It's a matter of thinking of the historical impediments to people that weren't men. I don't think it's just a matter of hating men. That's just my opinion on it.
Why is it that there is a push for more women in cushy, comfortable jobs that have a lot of status and a lot of influence, but there is no push for women in dirty, dangerous jobs, you know, like construction, which pays well, deep sea fishing, which pays well, security and so on. Why is there no push for more women in these jobs? because there's a serious lack of women in those particular jobs, but yet you never call for more women in those jobs. You do call for more women in politics or the STEM fields, you know, and it's like, but they're comfortable, cushy jobs, no risk, no danger, you don't get your hands dirty. Why is that? And as I say, it can't be for the money, because the jobs I mentioned pay well, but you don't call for more women in those jobs. Like, I've never heard a social justice warrior or a feminist say, we need more women in white goods delivery. I've never heard that before. And those jobs pay well. It's very strange. It's very strange and very telling, by the way. And I'd like you to answer, why is that, right?
I don't know how it's telling, but I can try to answer that. I actually think this is not a male-female thing. I think it's just those particular jobs are not seen as desirable to really either sex, but traditionally they have been male jobs. You know, if you had to work in a steel mill, or you had to work doing something kind of labor-intensive and backbreaking, and not really very enjoyable to support your family, you would do that because you just have to support your family. But people wouldn't do those jobs because, I mean, a lot of the time wouldn't do those jobs because they really wanted to. They just had no choice. They had to do those jobs. And in today's modern society, people have a lot more choice. So if we're looking at these jobs that traditionally have not been that desirable, and then we open up the job market so that women have a lot more opportunity, I think it just makes sense as a human being to be like, you know, I would prefer to be a lawyer or a doctor. That pays a lot and will have me being higher educated and have more esteem in society. It's basically, if you open jobs up to people, including women, they're going to want the more upskilled jobs. And I think there's a lot of complicated stuff going on with kind of class and, you know, social strata and basically economic opportunity. But I think that's not like a woman thing. I think that's kind of like a human nature thing. You're going to want to go for the nice job. I'd want to go for the nice job. Makes sense to me.
Are you aware, right, that when you put down men, which you do almost on a daily basis, if you want, just check Twitter. Every day there's a new fuck men hashtag, right?
Well, those are stupid. How can we fuck men?
Are you aware that when you put down men, right, that you're also putting down black men, Muslim men, and gay men? Are you aware of that? Because I think the way you see it is, when you put down men, you're only putting down straight white men. And I just want to let you know that you're not. You're actually putting down black men, Muslim men, gay men. Are you aware of this fact? I just ask because I don't think you are, right? I don't think you are.
Yeah, but this also makes me think about the nature of the dialogue, because you can say men is just a catch-all for something that frustrates you, like, fucking men piss me off so much. But you can also say, feminists piss me off. And, you know, you're not making any distinction about which feminists. Like, are you talking about TERFs or SWERFs? You're talking about radical feminists? You're talking about feminists that are not so radical, but they just sort of generally call themselves a feminist, and they just, like, kind of appreciate what feminism's going for? Like who are you talking about? You use feminism as a catch-all for things. People use Muslim for a catch-all for things. Or Islam. And, like, that's so fucking broad. Just like, oh, yeah, Islam. And SJW. You know, so people do it all the fucking time. When you say feminist, are you aware that you're throwing black feminists under the bus? You're throwing feminists in Afghanistan who are fighting for their lives against the Taliban under the bus when you say feminists. But, you know, everyone's just magically expected to know what you mean? I don't think that's really how it works. Like, when you say men do this or men do that, there is an implied not all, and I feel like that is just like Internet 101 at this point. We shouldn't have to even bother saying not all. Anybody who literally thinks kill all men or something is a fucking moron, and no one should listen to them. They can just fuck off.
This is concerning Black Lives Matter, so all the victim blacks will, you know, can get on board here, right?
I'm not a victim black, so I guess I can answer this one.
Why is it, right? Why is it Black Lives Matter and not All Lives Matter or White Lives Matter or what's the other one here that I've got? Native American Lives Matter, right? Now there's two sets of statistics that are the raw numbers which show that white people in America are far more likely, twice as likely, to be killed by police than black people, right? Now that's the raw numbers. And then the Black Lives Matter people say, no, 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 we're talking about per capita. Yes, and it's true that black people, of course, are more likely to be killed per capita than white people, but Native Americans are far more likely to be killed by the police than black people or white people per capita. So why is it Black Lives Matter? And if you take the two sets of statistics into account, whatever one you go to, you have to skip by a demographic in order to get to black people. The raw numbers, you have to skip past white people in order to get to black people. And when it comes to per capita, you have to skip past the Native Americans in order to get to black people. So why do you disregard these people? Why do you disregard these demographics? Why do you dismiss them so easily in order to focus on black people? I would like an answer to that. I'm very interested to know the answer to that, because is it raw numbers or per capita? And whatever it is, black people are not at the top of the list, so why is it Black Lives Matter and not All Lives Matter, White Lives Matter, or Native American Lives Matter? That's what I would like you to answer.
I think this question has a very obvious answer, which is that black people, and look, this might blow your mind because I know facts, not feels, but it has to be pointed out, black people believe, or they get the impression, that they are being shot by cops at unfair rates. Just forget all any facts, forget the fucking information. That's what they perceive, that's what they feel. So they feel that they are being put upon, that they are being targeted, they are scared, they fear for their lives, and I think it's valid to be concerned if you look around, and even if it is or isn't true, whatever, you get the perception that people around you are constantly being shot, and you're scared of interacting with the police, then a movement like Black Lives Matter is going to appear. Now, everyone is just nitpicking this whole Black Lives Matter thing so much, semantically. It should be All Lives Matter, it should be White Lives Matter, it should be whatever. But this is just a name for that specific movement. It's just for that movement. Do we need a movement to raise concern about white people being shot by cops? Yes, because that is still police brutality, and white lives do matter. Of course they fucking matter. It's just a movement based on that has not, coalesced. Maybe there is a fear of that being seen as racist, but we could make it about police brutality and then constantly point out how many whites are being killed, and then Black Lives Matter can be another concern with the cops, and I wouldn't see a fucking problem with that. So I feel like this is just semantics, people nitpicking, and not just thinking about why do people have movements? Why do they call movements things? It's not because their movements have perfect names and describe exactly everything that is occurring in the world. It's because, no, they have a cause and they're trying to express themselves. Irrespective of any facts on that situation, I think that's valid, and I think that is how a lot of movements throughout history have formed. So you can keep nitpicking the title of Black Lives Matter, but they just have a grievance and a concern. And that's the fucking point of a movement. People are being too literal about this.
Why is it when it comes to feminism, right? Why do you go to the dictionary definition of feminism in order to show, like for example, if a feminist says, kill all men, right? And somebody like me says, hey, look at that feminist saying kill all men. Other feminists will come to me and say, no, 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 no. The dictionary definition states this, right? Okay. Why is it you go to the dictionary definition in order to defend feminism, but yet completely avoid the dictionary definition when it comes to racism and edit it in order to make it appear that it's power plus privilege plus everything else? Why do you do that? Why is it that we can follow a dictionary definition with feminism, but we can't follow the dictionary definition of racism? Why is that?
I find this question very confusing and very difficult to answer, because I feel like I would have to read Goodfella's mind to understand what he's trying to get at here. Why do they say the dictionary definition of feminism? I think because when they see someone saying kill all men, they want to dissociate themselves from that and say that that's not feminism. There's nothing about killing all men in the dictionary definition of feminism, so it's natural that you would want to say, hey, that's not me, that's not my feminism, they didn't represent me. And that happens on like both sides of the argument. Say like this MRA said something disgusting, misogynistic about women, and then people say that doesn't represent us, that's not our MRA, that's somebody else. You know, MRA is not about hating women. You know, so it just happens on both sides. Like, people want to just defend their point of view. As for the definition of racism, power plus privilege, all that kind of stuff, I mean, I'm not the right person to talk to about that, because I just think racism is racism. I think black people can be racist. I think everyone can be racist. I lived in Japan for a while. They were fucking racist against the Chinese, so it's not a black-white thing, it's just a human thing. I've never maintained that, so I mean, I'm not the right person for that question.
You use the terms racist, sexist, xenophobe, Islamophobe, transphobe, ableist, ageist, you name it, right?
Well, I use them sometimes. I don't use Islamophobic. I tend to say anti-Muslim bigot. Ableist? Occasionally. I can't remember saying transphobic. I do say racist sometimes. I'm a mixed bag with that shit.
You use these terms often, right? In order to, usually to dismiss people, you know. So if somebody says something that you can't possibly, you know, counter, like I'm doing right now, you'll just go, oh, he's a racist, done, right? But why is it that you can't understand, right, that even if it's true, right now you're labelling me a sexist and a racist and an Islamophobe and a xenophobe, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. But how can you not understand that that doesn't mean I'm wrong? Even if I was a racist, an Islamophobe, a sexist, a misogynist, a xenophobe, or whatever else, that doesn't make my opinion wrong. You know, it doesn't make what I'm saying wrong. How can you not get that through your head? No matter if the people you're talking to are racist, that doesn't mean they're wrong. You know, so can you tell me, why do you not understand that?
I've not followed your content enough, but if I saw something in there that I thought was those things, I actually probably wouldn't point that out, because like, I would probably just think that, but not say it, because I don't want to well poison. And sometimes I think, well, that shit is sexist. Or, fuck, that thing's racist. But I don't want to say it, because it just gets into bickering and fights. I would prefer to try to talk about it. So you could see me as a bad person, because I'm secretly thinking this is racist. It doesn't help people have a dialogue or figure things out to just say that, so I kind of try to avoid it. This is actually an interesting question, because it's something that I've thought about often. Why, when you say, black people commit a lot more crimes, do people say that's racist? And I think I have an idea of why that is. It's because people are looking at the reasons as to why you're pointing that out. And they're trying to like figure out like, why is that person saying that black people, like what is the goal here? Because if I saw those kind of statistics, what I would be thinking would be like, well, how do you reduce that? And I would probably think of like education and lifting up these neighborhoods and, you know, changing some of the culture, you know, the crime culture. I don't think the rap music shit has anything to do with it. But I just think of like, how would you make these situations better? But some people get the impression that people bring that up to just be like, fucking black people. Typical fucking black people. And if that's your attitude about black people, then it's like, well, what do you want to do? You know, that all you think of is just fucking blacks. But do you think of like, how do we improve the situation? And some people's answer to that is just fix the culture. Well, but what about all the other shit around the culture, like where they live and their neighborhoods and their access to things and just their ability to improve their lives? Nah, just fix the culture. And then that gets a little bit, maybe this person is a little bit racist, if that's the only thing that they can think of. The only thing they can think of is, they got a culture that's wrong. And they just love the crime. And then they start talking about IQs and shit. That's like some red flag shit, like maybe I'm talking to a racist. And I think that's where it comes from, to be perfectly honest. And, you know, you wanted an answer for that. So I generally think it's a valid thing to talk about those statistics, but it's just a matter of like how you talk about it. That's all.
The next thing is, why are you so annoyed at Brock Turner's sentence? Why are you so annoyed at that? But yet you never say anything about the many, many women who escape jail after committing sex crimes. Why is that? Like, take for example Brock Turner. He actually got jail time, right? Still there's an uproar from you people. Yes, I said you people. Apparently that's racist. I don't know why, but it is. And I said it, right? But why is there an uproar from you people with Brock Turner's sentence? But take the two women who were abusing a boy for, what, 10, 12 years of his life? And they escaped jail because they were deaf. Why don't you mention that? Why is there no uproar from you for that crime and for that sentence?
I just simply didn't know about it. That sounds fucking disgusting.
See, I really believe that the reason you're annoyed at Brock Turner's sentence is because he got a women's sentence. You expected him to get a man's sentence, and that's why you're really annoyed. But I'd still like you to answer, why are you so upset at Brock Turner's sentence, but not at the women who escape jail when they commit sex crimes? Just a thought.
Without looking up all the details about the Brock Turner case again, I think it's because it was very open and shut. It was like there was 2 witnesses who saw this occurring. There was the testimony of the victim. All the other evidence corroborated it. You know, some people made excuses for Brock Turner's behavior. And then he got a very light sentence. And it's perceived because he was like the super swimmer in the school that he just got a light sentence. And that will piss people off. But I hadn't even heard of this fucking situation with the women. I don't care the identity of these people. Anybody who is raping or abusing anyone else should go to fucking prison. And I was going to say suffer, but I am kind of one of those restorative justice people. So learn to be better. Hopefully. Otherwise suffer.
Why do you use the term women and minorities right now? That, not why do you use that. I know that you do use that. You use this term all the time, right? Women and minorities, right? Are you aware of 2 facts, right? One, men are a minority, right? And white people on a global scale are a minority. So when you say women and minorities, wouldn't you just be better off saying everybody? I mean, seriously? Men are a minority, so women and minorities, that's everybody then, right? Why don't you just say everybody rather than women and minorities?
That is like really semantics right there. Men are a minority because they're a minority of the world population. That's like very black and white thinking. You're not thinking about their place in the world. You know, what power do they have? What can they do? What's available to men? No, it's literally just like, you've got this number and you've got this number. You need to be able to analyze things. Like, it's completely meaningless to say that men are a minority. If they're in power, then it is totally fucking irrelevant. A very minor minority, because it's pretty close to women, so that's just weird. I don't get it.
I mean, let's be honest here, right? I ask these questions, but I kind of know the answer to most of them already, and the answer to this one is simple. When you say women and minorities, what you really mean is not white heterosexual Christian men. That's what you really mean. That's what you mean. But you just don't say it, you know.
No, because we have things called countries. Countries have different demographic makeups, and they're not exactly the same as the world. You know, because if you lived in Africa and you're a white dude, you're going to be a total minority. But if you live in Sweden and you're a white dude, you're going to be the majority. So it's like, no, there's fucking countries. I think it's kind of ridiculous to think about the world as just one glob. And then it's just like a pie graph here, this is the world, and then you got this little line here, and that's men and that's women. No, it's like broken up into different cultures, different countries. The majority in Japan is Japanese people. The minority is Ainu people, who are the native people of that country, who live on the island of Hokkaido. They're referred to as the minority. In New Zealand, we've got Maori people, they're referred to as the minority, and then white Europeans are the majority. In Australia, they've got Aborigines, who are the minority, and then white Europeans are the majority. In numerous other countries, you have the majority, and then you've got the minority, or many minorities, if it's more of a like melting pot society. So, I think it's quite bizarre to just look at the world as this giant blob, which is a zero-sum game, and just like, there's this number of white people, this number of black people, this number of Asian people, and then not even consider the fact that all of these are broken up into like countries and different places, and they even had like a world war with all these different countries fighting each other to become the majority of the world, because that's what they fucking wanted. Like, the Nazis wanted to become the majority of the world, and the fucking Japanese wanted to just take over everything, and Genghis Khan, and what the fuck? Dude.
It's almost like you don't have the balls to say it. Was that sexist? I don't care.
No, it's because it doesn't make sense. This way.
Another question, right? Are you aware of how unrealistic, right, and unreasonable verbal ongoing consent actually is?
I agree, because I think non-verbal cues are a very important part of sex. If you're having sex with someone and they grimace or they have an expression like they're not enjoying it, stop and say, "Are you okay?" And if they're like, "Yeah, you need me in the ribs," be like, "Oh, sorry about that. I'll just stop kneeing you in the ribs," and then go back to having sex. It's fine. But you shouldn't have to say yes every 2 seconds. And this is the thing, that like, feminism is more diverse than people put on, because a lot of feminists don't agree with yes means yes or ongoing consent. Recently, someone was trying to strawman me with enthusiastic consent. Also, kind of unrealistic, because sometimes you just have sex that's not very good. And I don't mean the bad sex, which is like allegory for rape. I mean, like, occasionally you do just have bad sex. It's not enthusiastic. I'm not talking about that kind of like, oh, it was just bad sex even though it was rape. No, sometimes you do have bad sex. And that's fine, and that's not rape. So I think the yes means yes standard too high. Unless the person is paralyzed or is not capable of talking, then you're going to have both things. You're going to have the verbal, and you're going to have the physical. And that's natural. And I think that's how it should work. So maybe, yeah, not a question for me.
Are you aware of how utterly insulting it is to suggest that men should be taught not to rape? Are you aware that it's insulting to suggest that men are rapists by default and have to be taught, usually by feminists, not to rape? Don't you see how insulting that is? And if men should be taught not to rape, shouldn't black people be told not to commit violent crime, since they commit the most violent crime? And shouldn't women be taught not to kill their own children, since they're most likely to kill their own children when it comes to people killing their own children? It's mostly mothers that do it. Shouldn't women be taught not to kill their own children? No? I mean, if these are insulting and offensive, why can't you see that that's the case for teaching men not to rape? Seriously? See, the thing is, again, I know the answer. You do know that it's offensive and insulting, and that's why you say it.
Yes. Actually, you answered your own question at the very end, because I've been talking to some other people about this recently, and I didn't really know the answer, like, why do they say men shouldn't rape? It turns out, or at least I've heard, that that was a counter-reaction to people saying women should keep themselves safe in dangerous situations, and that was perceived as saying, women should learn not to get raped by doing A, B, and C. If they didn't wear that, if they just had a different posture, maybe if they dressed less attractively, they wouldn't get raped. So a bunch of feminists got together in a smoky room in an evil cabal and decided, hey, let's say men shouldn't rape. And that's where that came from. And so, yeah, it's supposed to be insulting. It's meant to be using the same logic that was used on women. Women have to learn to avoid getting themselves raped. Oh yeah? Men should learn not to rape. So it turns out both of those are wrong. And I think that got lost along the way, because people think that that is a legitimate point of view, that you should teach men not to rape. No, you should teach men about consent and signs that you can tell that a woman is not into it anymore, and now it's not just sex, it's turning into something else, and you should stop. It wouldn't be saying we're all rapists. It would just be saying, hey, you know, there's certain things you can do to make sure you're gonna have a good time. But I have to stop here because I'm 15 minutes 21 through this video, and it's half an hour long, and I'll never get to the fucking end. So I'm just gonna have to do this another day. I hope my answers have not been too ridiculously shitty. But it was off the cuff, so they probably were. Anyways, donate to my Patreon. I don't have one, so I'll create one and then donate to that. Thank you.